All right. Welcome into Bully the Board week 4. We've had three varying results. Week 3 was maybe not as bad as week 2, but maybe not the week we're also looking for. So 4 weeks in, Steve, how you feeling so far?
We're pushing through, man. We're pushing through. I think we have the high of week 1, and then, like you said, the last 2 weeks definitely weren't what we're hoping for. But and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But I think this is kind of what I don't say expected, but I think the ceiling's definitely a lot higher as we enter more and more data points into the
Yeah.
model. So hope it's still high though, for sure.
Yeah, I totally echo that. Just gotta keep positive. And the reality here, I've been dealing with a lot of the trolls. And it basically comes to three beliefs. That's what I've kind of worked through in this, and that's basically you believe that we're going to continue to win at a 30% rate, which I've found a little bit perplexing that people don't understand how difficult that actually is. If you win 30% consistently, then we're printing money in the opposite direction, right? That means if you're fading the picks, you're winning 70%, which is stellar win rates, right? And so that's one belief. That one seems the most illogical, but yet I still hear it over and over. The second belief, which is I think probably the most common understanding, is that we won't do better than chance, and so we'll just fluctuate between 50%, right? Which means that we're we're very much due for a winning week. And then there's kind of the third option, which is the reality that we think is, and that is that we'll have an edge over a season's worth of games. But I agree with you. Obviously, not how you want to come out. We haven't seen this before, to be honest. This is the worst the model's ever done in weeks 2 and 3. We're hoping for a bounce back week. We'll get into the games, but I'm with you. Gotta keep the faith, so to speak. So with that being said,
But I will
oh
say
yeah,
though, I mean, there are no more victories. Again, this is our money
yeah,
too.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we don't take pride in the fact that, oh well, we only lost by a little bit, we lost by that, and a loss is a loss.
yeah,
But from a hope standpoint, just like this, don't take all joy from me. Week 2 was tough. Even though we had two
yeah,
losing weeks, the bad beat nature of week 2 was just absolutely brutal. There really
yep,
weren't any bad beats this week. I mean, there were definitely some games that were close that had
yeah,
a chance of covering. I think the Patriots and the Vikings were the closest thing to a bad beat because they almost covered. They were covering
yep.
for a long time, but that's what's keeping me going.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And for anybody that's like following us along and that's super into analytics to kind of get super into the weeds here, going from the week 1 model, which is basically weeks 2 through 18 in the previous season, has an adjusted R squared about 36%. And that's usually right around where we the model usually is. It can get low, but it's usually stays around 30 to 40%. Adding weeks 2 and 3 for predicting week 4 took our adjusted R squared from 36% to 18%, which means that those data that we added in weeks 2 and 3 are fundamentally very, very different than most of the data that happened last year. Now, and that tracks, right? Jacksonville, are they good? Question mark. Like that, they're playing like they
Yeah,
are. Philly,
yeah,
way better than they were.
right.
Chargers, they're playing kind of better and kind of worse. Washington with these changes in quarterbacks, so obviously week 2 was brutal from a bad beat standpoint, but the reality is that those 2 weeks specifically have been very different than historical NFL games for last season. That is so. Food for thought. I'm totally with you. Patriots, I was so surprised because when watching that, I was like, okay, here we go. Here's like the Patriots backdoor. I
Yeah.
was really surprised at how poorly Mac Jones played. I mean, he threw 2 key interceptions that, I mean, just quite frankly, did not need to happen. And, I don't know if it cost us the cover or the win, but I was just surprised that it kind of reminded me. I think I've given Mac Jones a lot more credit than maybe credit was due
Mhm.
there. And then the other one that jumps out at me is Saints. Saints have just
Oh,
very, very, very underperformed there with that offense. They was supposed to be like best thing on turf, but they have not put it together.
Yeah. Well, and that was the triple loss, right? Because you have the Saints over for the future, Saints
Yeah.
pick, and then the Panthers under.
Yeah.
So like we knew there was some concern there. Just from like listen, if you're all the bettors, you had that feeling like, oh, if it can't go wrong, it's gonna go wrong. And that was one of the things we were like, man, that's the one game I really like to not lose this week. But no,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think what really said it to me, just from an emotional, gambler standpoint, was in that Patriots game. So the Patriots, I think it was a soft interception, and we had a missed field goal. Justin Tucker missed a PAT, excuse me, a PAT.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Tucker never misses. I'm like, oh, this is perfect, because they were down 11 late in the game. Like, they're going to get the touchdown, going to get the 2-point conversion because they have to go for it.
Yep.
Boom, backdoor cover. And then that clearly did not happen. So
and then they went for 2, and then they counted it at first, and then they pulled it off. The sad thing there is I was watching so many other games. I didn't see the Mac Jones injury, which seems like it's going to be pretty significant. I haven't heard anything one way or the other. But I follow a doctor, an MD, that does like fantasy updates for injuries. And he was saying that basically it's more than likely he needs surgery. That's why he's getting a second opinion, just to confirm that he needs that. So who knows, but that's a rough one. Vikings still underperforming. I mean, when they pull up the miracle win, you're just so pissed, especially when they miss 2 field goals. We could have easily covered that game. And then yet again, we've said this all along. I don't think people really, some people I think will listen and are listening, but others just want to argue. But you pick too many games. You gotta dwindle this down. You got to pick which ones are going to win. And consistently 2 weeks in a row now, it was week 2 Cardinals, and then week 3 Titans. We hate this game. We hate it. We don't understand it. There's no way. This is blasphemy. And what do you know? The ones, we sat here a week ago. Who do we like the most? Chargers.
Right. Exactly.
Got murdered by Jacksonville. Right. Right score, wrong teams. But Titans, they I don't want to say dominated, because they definitely wavered at the end there. But that was an interesting game. Anything you take away there from Titans or maybe Vegas? Because man, both those teams are question mark teams.
Yeah. For me, it's more. I don't take any credit away from Tennessee, but to me, that was more of what Vegas didn't do than what Tennessee did. I think because now you're getting to the point where Vegas is the only winless team in the league, right?
Yeah.
You had huge expectations. I mean, you had Derek Carr is supposed to, make this leap into, good quarterback to elite quarterback. You got Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. Like, you have these weapons. It's time to go. I mean, these were AFC West champions in some people's mind, because they had the stacked roster, and now they're 0-3, and it's not really looking like what it's supposed to be. And meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers being all freaking Aaron Rodgers, tied atop the NFC North. So we'll see. That was my big thing. I think my other big takeaway, and this is kind of what I want to talk to you about and ask you, Seth, is for everyone's kind of understanding. We talk about, the model and, how it's going to get more data points and, these things we haven't really seen. I think one of the other things, I think publicly, that people were really questionable about, and even, we say we love the fake Carson Wentz all the time, but the Eagles, man, the Eagles are freaking rolling. And, you say, okay, week 1, all right, Lions, they were huge, they were up huge, and they let the Lions back in the game. Are they good? Is it a fluke? Week 2, kind of same thing. But 3-0 now, like, are these guys for real? And is at what point is this not something the model hasn't seen versus this is a reality? Like, the Eagles are here, the Eagles are good.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question and a good point. And to give you an idea of how quickly it's learning, it would have picked the Eagles in week 4 if the spread would have opened at 3. So it would have been a pick at 3. So, and if Jacksonville's actually good, then it should be 3, right? Like this, this is where some of the reality comes in. Like, if Jacksonville is the 2nd overall DOVA ranked team. Okay. So put that in perspective.
Yeah.
Philly's number 3. Or 3. Philly's, I think, 4. Philly, I think, is 4. So how is Vegas making this a 7-point spread?
Right.
I'm not exactly sure, but it's learning. It's learning quickly. Now that one's a little bit interesting because I'm not sure if it's learning. Philly's getting a lot better, or if it's still giving not enough credit to Jacksonville there. That one's a little bit interesting, but
Sure.
but
Yeah.
point being, it's close, right? It's learning,
Right.
and the good thing about our methodology for the 1 year is we're removing data from last season as we add from this season, right? So not only is it
Right.
that's really why it's learning rapidly, right? Because you're getting rid of data that's outdated, right? Whatever happened last year for the Eagles is not as pertinent now as it or it wasn't. It's not as important now as it was then, right? And so I think by week 7, 8, we'll be humming there with those elite teams, assuming, right? The big assumption is they are kind of who we thought they were or are,
Yeah.
right? Um, to be told with a lot of these teams, right? It's still learning. I think who is Vegas? Who are the Titans? These are some of the bottom feeders, but who are the elite teams? Because it doesn't look like it's exactly who it's always been. Buffalo is
Right.
starting to be different, I think, than they were. Baltimore, same. Baltimore's always been a good team, but you got to remember Lamar didn't start a lot of games last year. He started like let's say half, and they struggled. They had a lot of injuries, right? So it's got to learn that hey, this is a real deal team. So yeah, I think by week 10, 11, you should be locked in there, and it's really not going to see the same fluctuations week to week, both not only from the model but from the DOVA rankings, because there'll be more stability with more games in there. So I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was saying, so what was what was your just as a sports bettor, what was your takeaway? What was one of the games where maybe you learned something, got surprised? Again, for me, it was more so what Vegas didn't do than what Tennessee did. But were any games that really spoke to you?
Same. That one's so interesting to me, Vegas.
Yeah.
That seems so weird. Like you would think that would work, but it's just not. And
Right.
really the root cause there, and I don't necessarily have it. We broke down some games yesterday, and it looks like if you really look at it, like their defense is like maybe the issue there. But that doesn't explain why they're putting up so few points. So I'm not exactly sure. Bengals, not surprising. It looks like that was an overreaction by the sky is falling. The model that was basically right on the head there. Chicago, I still, even though I didn't like that pick, I don't think I learned anything contrary to what I believe, which is that team I think is going to struggle. No offense,
Yeah.
Steve. Or they're just one dimensional. They're just a younger team, right?
No,
Great defensive
I
play
saw.
there at the end, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And oh god, I was yelling so hard. Yeah, no, I saw a stat. It's like there's 3 receivers in the league that have more catches than the entire Chicago Bears wide receiver roster. So yeah.
I mean, when you're running for your life, right? It can be hard to throw the ball. So, I mean, to be honest, I'm not really high or low yet. I mean, there are a couple teams obviously that are at the bottom, and obviously some clear top performers, but Saints are still a question to me. Vikings, another big question mark. Are these teams just going to continue to be mediocre? And the answer might
Right.
be yes, but they have the talent, so it's there's interesting things there. And then obviously the Bucks, they seem to be doing the classic Tom Brady, just hanging around. Obviously, I think if they win that game, if they have Mike Evans, or in really any of their,
Anybody?
that 2-point conversion came down to basically, it was clear they didn't even know what play. Like he was having to tell the wide receivers where to, where the motion was, all this stuff. So, I think having some of those pieces back over time will help them. But yeah, I think still a lot to be learned, and I think maybe more surprising quicker is that I think Washington, Arizona look to me like maybe the 2 worst teams. Now, Arizona at least has some players coming back, but I don't know what really Washington's going to hang their hat on. I guess they have Chase Young coming back, but I don't know that changes how bad the defense is and how they're struggling. But that's why we march on. In the interim, let's talk about the future. So, man, like you said earlier, Steve, if anything could go wrong, it will go wrong, and it did. Our teams basically went wrong for every game. Bengals, Colts, and Panthers all win, and Saints and New England both lose. So, we're far from panicking here. If you break this down, um, you know, we're not in panic mode. We don't need to be. I think
Right.
Colts, I think, is at 9 now. Um, uh, Carolina is still at 6.5, and Bengals at 9 as well. So I think we're ahead of the curve, so to speak, on those. And then I didn't get a chance to look at the other two, but we'll see. Obviously, Mac Jones being out is going to impact New England. Anyone you feel better about now, or maybe feel equal about them all now? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, for me, I think the one I still feel pretty great about are the Bengals for sure. The Bengals under.
Okay.
Going into this, when we first had these projections out, I was kind of looking, okay, what's the schedule going to look like, this and
Yeah.
that, and you look at it, the Bengals were, at least in my opinion, the front half of the schedule was supposed to be the good part, and the back half is where things are supposed to get tough. And so with
Yeah.
them being 1-2, and then the front half, and now you've got the divisional matchups. You've got the Ravens coming up, and then it gets, the Browns. Browns may be good, right? They already lost to the Steelers, but then once you start getting through, some of the other tougher competition, I really don't see how the Bengals are going to get
Yeah.
to 10 at all. So
Yeah, and as we record this now, they're playing Dolphins. They're winning 7-3 at the end of the first. So, this is a tough matchup within itself, right? On a short week.
right.
So, yeah, interesting, man. The 3 unders I don't feel too bad about. The 2 overs I have now some stress
Sure.
about, specifically 8.5. And I think Kevin said it last week. I think that hook may be the death of us there, especially with Mac out. If Mac's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks or even the season, that may be tough.
Right.
That may be tough,
Right.
especially in that division, right? And hey, they without a Mac Jones, I think you probably push with the Jets, right? What is reasonable? Go 1-1 maybe, and then you got 2 losses to Miami, 2 losses to the Bills. It can pile up quick, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think small. We're early. I was trying to reflect yesterday. Part of me, I like Joe Burrow, so it's part of me hurts to root against them, and we'll talk about this in a couple of minutes, but our model's got a couple of these games. We're betting on a couple of these games this week, so good and bad, right? We need them to come through when the model picks them, but then other than that, we want them to fail. So it's kind of an interesting thing, right? But in the aggregate, right, it'll come together hopefully. And the reality is profitability here looks like winning 3 out of these 5, and that's really what we're expecting to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we hop into the card, Steve, you have a quick update for us for Circa. I can go back here. We just to remind everybody, we're in the Circa Millions competition. Going into last week, I believe we were 500. I think we were 5 and what were we?
5 and
We were
5.
5 and 5. Yep, 5 and 5. We picked 5 games from this card, and let this be a lesson, or at least let this be a data point to the point that we continue to make. You will have a tough time trying to pick which games you like from the model. If you try to use the model and then say, well, this one makes sense to me and this one doesn't, which is basically what we have to do to whittle this down to 5. We've struggled with it, guys, and I think our record reflects that. So, Steve, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah. So to your point, we absolutely hated that Titans pick. We thought that was just a huge bounce back game for Vegas. Titans looked dead in the water, and then what do? They, for the most part, pretty handily covered for 3.5 quarters, and then had a little bit of a scare at the end, but they still came through. So last week we ended up, and remember, for the Circa, the lines open up on Thursday and they're already locked in. So
right.
There's no movement. So somebody's going to sound a little off, but remember, these are different than what you may have found, on Sunday morning. So we took Bengals -6, Saints -2.5, Vikings -6, Chargers -7. Oof. And then the Bucks end up being a pick 'em at that point. And so, yeah. And so that's kind of where we went. So we ended up, even though the Bengals moved up a point and whatnot, so we still ended up, getting some victories there, but definitely more losses. So where we ended up doing was went 1-4, And so we're 6-9 overall, tied for 3,340th place. So, definitely was a little bit of a hard week. There are 2 people right now who are actually 15-0.
Wow.
So that's pretty impressive. Yeah, don't stop believing in the Leong shots, Leong. Yes, I mean it's some pretty fierce competition, which we knew that was going to be the case. But
Yeah.
season's still young,
Yep.
so we're definitely looking forward to making some more picks. And I'm actually we chose Winner Circle Proxy as our proxy service because none of us live in Vegas for this, and they actually have a competition just amongst folks who use their service. I haven't seen any updates yet, but if we get updates on where we're doing within just that pool, we'll for sure update you guys too. Hopefully, it's a little not a stiff competition, gives a little more
Yeah.
wiggle room to take that too.
Yeah, and then the reality here is we're just, the model is going to have to do its part here, and it's going to have to give us winners. It's compounded, right? Not only are we having to struggle to pick from from the list, but then if there's already only a handful of winners there, then it becomes even more difficult. So,
Right.
I think in the future we're aiming and forecasting to improve on that record and convert it to a winning record. So I guess that brings us to week 4 and the week 4 card. No surprise here for me. Like I had alluded to before, when your adjusted R squared goes down, your standard error and your variance is going to go up. When that goes up, your prediction intervals get wider. When they're wider, less games can get ruled in. No surprise here. We opened the week with 5 picks, but there was a little bit of movement that pulled a 6th game in the Bills. And so we will have 6 picks for the cards or for week 4. Pretty interesting. Like I said, we have 2 of our under picks that we're taking this week. So, let's hope that they can pull through here this week. And instead of screwing us like they did last week, they can pull through. So I guess let's just start right at the top. Broncos +2. This game is going to be in Vegas. We've kind of alluded to this already. This is an 0-3 Raiders team. They seem to be struggling. Man, is it hyperbolic to say every which way? They don't seem to be able to score. They seem to, they blew the Cardinals game. It just is, I don't understand what's going on there. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just me, but the audio cut out there on your last segment there.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, who are we talking about?
I was just saying the Broncos, and them going into Vegas.
Right. Yeah, I know this. Yeah, this is the one where this is a coin flip game to me, and I think that's kind of reflected with the spread, being +2.
Yeah.
Yeah. On one hand, that San Francisco game was ugly. 11-10. Just and then they had to hug the game against Houston. It was like 16-9. Like this just there's not been, and of course lost Seattle. There's not been one defining quarter, half, definitely not game. I'm like, okay, here we go. Russell Wilson is going to take the Broncos to the promised land. This is a legitimate team. Now, I will say though that defense, when you're holding teams to sub 15, single digits some games, that says something. So I don't really feel like you could tell me Broncos won by a touchdown or Vegas won by a touchdown, and I'm like, yeah, sounds right. Either which way. What I do think is going to happen though is, I think Vegas is not who we thought they were. I think the season will get better as it goes along, but they're trying to figure things out, and then there's that pressure, right? Like there's pressure. The AFC West is supposed to be tough, even though there's did pretty poorly last so far, but I think that Broncos defense is going to show up. I think, unfortunately, Carr and Adams and co continue to not light it up. And maybe this is the week where, it's a little easier for Russ to get cooking. And, I can see the Broncos pretty easily covering here. But like I said, I can also see them pretty easily not as well.
Yeah. When we dug deeper into this game yesterday, what jumps out to me is, it seems like it's 2 issues in Vegas, right? Offense and defense. They're struggling on both sides of the ball. And really, this is a lopsided weakness in Broncos just struggling on offense. We've seen it week to week. They get into the red zone and they just, we're talking 1-inch line. And they cannot they cannot get points. And we're talking multiple drives, right?
Right.
So to me, it's like, what's more probable? A get right game against a soft, struggling defense where you have the tools, you just got to put it together. You're getting to the red zone, you just got to figure out some good plays. So, get that communication better and up to speed. And then against an inferior defense versus Vegas has got to hope to work through I think it was a top 5 defense. I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, but I mean, it was definitely a top 10 defense in almost all the categories. And, and by the way, do that. And then also go from like the top, with top 5 worst defenses, you got to, do better. Right.
Yeah.
That's a lot to ask. That's a lot to ask. Now, that being said, you're 0-3. So if you can't do it now, when can you do it? So I don't know. Maybe they got to call up Rich Bisaccia from Green Bay and they say, hey, you come down here and we'll give you guys back Devontae and we'll just go back to how it was before. All right. How does that sound good? No, I forgot to say that before, but I almost wish this is like, I wish it was like real life where Devontae could be like, you know what? I fucked up. Like, I'll give you back the money. I want to go back with Aaron.
Take me back. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I want to see Aaron I want to see Aaron win. I feel like he gets a lot of hate for not a lot of logic in my mind. And I think that, man, I would love to see him have Devontae. I think that would really have pushed him over. So it's sad to see this not working. Because you can't blame him for leaving and going in something that seemed like greener pastures, but it's just not. And not to overreact, but I don't think he's going to be able to put it together this year in the same way he would have with Aaron. But who knows? Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm with you. You love this at 3, but the reality is, if Vegas is trying to do the punk ass shit that they usually do, they would have priced this at 3 if they're trying to get people to bet on Vegas, right?
Yeah.
And from our power ratings and the data that we look at, there's really there's no reason that the Broncos shouldn't be favored here. I'm not really understanding this. I mean, maybe you call it home field advantage, but that's not something we believe a whole lot in, is specifically in Vegas of all places, right? So we'll see. We'll see. I guess that leads us into Panthers. This game is Panthers versus Arizona. This is going to be in Carolina. This is a week 4 matchup. I haven't seen anything for Christian McCaffrey. Last we looked, he was not day to day. And then last we looked, also AJ Green was going to be out for the Cardinals. The spread is 1.5. This one is interesting to me. This one's very interesting to me. Cardinals seem to be struggling. Panthers don't seem to be, the best team in the NFL. But what do you make of this, Steve?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that this is one of the ones too where we have two teams who going into the season thought they were going to be better than what they actually are. Now, again, Cardinals have some players missing. Baker, maybe Baker is just Baker. Maybe Baker is the Johnny Manziel of the next incarnation, where he's just not who we thought he was. That the ceiling's already been reached. The Panthers clearly had a great showing against New Orleans, but again, I don't know if that's more New Orleans or that's more Carolina. And in my heart of hearts, I live in AZ. I'm not a Cardinals fan, but in my heart of hearts, I just want to believe that Arizona is a better team because they should be. But yeah, I mean, this is a game where I don't really necessarily feel great about it. I would only feel better about Arizona because, again, it's a coin flip game, and I get a point and a half. Probably not going to mean much in the grand scheme of things, but you can make cases for either way. Now, if CMC goes down, and I mean, dude, this guy's Mr. Glass, and I intentionally avoided all. I didn't even look at him in my fantasy draft because I've been burned 2 years in a row. So I told myself, not again. And, sure enough. So anyway, yeah, I do think this is going to be, I could definitely see it swinging our way. Another coin flip game for me, but based off what we've seen so far, not what our feelings are, just what's actually been a product on the field. Yeah, I think the Panthers have a pretty good shot at pulling this off.
Yeah, and similar to the other game, it looks like, Arizona's defense is struggling. I mean, they're struggling kind of all over the place, but I mean, their opponents have outscored them 31-0 in first quarter. So this is an opportunity for, again, the Carolina Panthers to put together. They're a middle of the road team, maybe with a matchup against a struggling team. They just don't look to be able to do a lot offensively. It looks like they're not going to have AJ Green. A lot of people have been telling me in speaking to our followers, like, oh, but Kyler's going to run all over him. Well, if they can't throw the ball and they can't run the ball, and it's just Kyler running all over them, that ain't that hard to defend. This is the same as Vegas, right? If it's pouring rain and they just know, okay, all he's going to do is scramble, well, you could stop that, guys, if that's the only threat. And there's not a whole lot else they have. Ertz maybe can pull off a game, but I mean, I don't know. This seems to be, to me, the model is going to not overreact, right? I think this is a potential opportunity that's just catching on that, hey, you got a mediocre team going into a sliding defensive team that's just not up to snuff right now, and hopefully can take advantage. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'll take it though. I'm a fan of Baker. I mean, hopefully this is a game where Baker can get right. The rain is a little bit interesting. We're gonna see that. But from my understanding, it should be pretty light because it'll be up from the hurricane. It'll be up more north in the Philly, Washington, New England area by then, by Sunday. So I don't think it'll be too rainy there, but we'll see. All right. Dallas Cowboys 3.5. This is in Dallas. Yes, this is in Dallas. And they have the Washington Commanders coming to town. We talked about a little bit about it. Obviously, when we can, we don't want to bet on Carson Wentz, and when we can bet against him is even better. So what are your initial thoughts here, Steve?
Love this bet. And listen,
I know.
Before these Cowboys fans get, oh, this is our year and all that. No, I'm not doing it for you. But yeah, no, like I said, I don't even know really why. This has kind of been a running joke if you guys have been following us since we kind of launched. But since week one, we've always talked about, like, I don't trust Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
I hate Carson Wentz. I like to fade Carson Wentz. Like, I really have nothing against the guy. I don't know why, but this is where we're at, right? This is kind of where we're at right now. No, we look at this. I love this matchup. I think Cooper Rush is a more than capable backup. He's already had the experience with Dak going down, with that lower body injury before. So, Cooper Rush is not going to be a fish in the water. He knows how to lead this offense. And he's undefeated. He's undefeated as a starter. This, running for, this season and the last season. So, I do. I think that, and not just what I think from the eye test, clearly they had a terrible game against Tampa Bay in week one, and they barely pulled that one out against Cincy. But listen, when you look at the stats, the Cowboys are the better team, and they're the better team in almost every category. We talk about looking at the DVOA rankings, and I think this is just a time where they're going to start clicking. And I don't know what's going on in Washington, man. I don't really see much of an upside. I think the team we've seen is the team we're going to get. I mean, we have Washington in week one, and quite frankly, that was a tight one. I mean, Jacksonville easily, could have came back and honestly probably should have won. But with that being said, I do feel very comfortable with this pick. This is the pick that I would easily be all over if we didn't have the model. Now, I could be wrong for sure, but this definitely aligns. This is where the math and the eyes definitely kind of align for me.
Yeah. The head and the heart. Yeah, I'm reluctant to echo what you're saying, because I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah, I'm like, oh, thank God, I love this pick, but I'm gonna refrain from saying that out loud, because it's without a doubt every pick we've loved has lost. Now that being said, actually just had this thought. We've bet on or against Washington in all 4 weeks. We bet on Washington week one. They covered. We bet against them when we bet the Lions. The Lions did their job, and then we bet on them the Washington Commanders last week, and they did not do their job. So, the reality is DVOA rankings overall, the Commanders are 32nd. I think where if my hypothesis here, sprinkling in my mental model for what I'm seeing from the data, when you're talking about, I think the 5th overall run offense in Dallas, and you're talking about the 29th run defense in Commanders, I think this is going to be a very similar game to when they play Detroit, where they can just run the ball all over Washington. but I think we're looking at a better receiver core. So I think this may be a bigger blowout, but a similar result in a similar type of game. But I think Pollard and Zeke will go off here. And so that's really what I'm looking on here. And the model agrees. I think this has got a minimum of a 2-possession win here. So,
Yeah.
Taking 3.5 all day. Let's hope we're not eating our words again come week 5. But one that does make a lot of sense to me from a matchup standpoint. And obviously it has the division tones as well. But we saw that last week. And it's not just because it was a division game. It was very clear. Just they can't do anything. They can't do anything, division or not. Right.
Right.
All right. So we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game is in Pittsburgh. We got the New York Jets coming to town. Zach Wilson will be starting. All indications show that that'll be the case. No more Flacco. I mean, he played pretty well, actually, for the first 3 weeks, but time to get your guy back. He's had a very interesting offseason. This one, Steve, this one's probably, I don't know, I won't speak for you, but for me, if we love Dallas, I hate this one. This one, I don't have a lot of faith in Trubisky. They seem to struggle with scoring points, which is quite interesting. Now, they have gone against some pretty good teams. That's, the one caveat here. They've played the Browns, which I think are a good team, Cincy, which I think is a good team, and New England, which I don't know. Are they a good team? Maybe not. So I don't know. What are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, man. Yeah, Steelers have definitely had some ugly games so far on offense, and you're hearing the crowd calling for Kenny Pickett, and I get it. I feel kind of bad for Mitch, but that's the league that we're in. But with that being said, I do think that if there's ever, we said the same thing about the Bengals last week. If there's ever a time to get a get right game, it's gonna be against the Jets, and I think that still holds true for this week as well. Now, clearly Zach Wilson's back, but what does that mean, right? He's missed the first 4 games. He didn't get much preseason action because he got hurt.
Practice. Hard to practice. Right? You can't practice when your knee's busted, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I clearly he's the future of that franchise, at least for the next year or so while they figure things out. And he's a good player, but when you I don't think you just put him back in and expect miracles. So,
Agreed. That one's practice. Mika Fitzpatrick practices on Wednesday. I was just looking up. One of the things here for me is Zach Wilson back, but then the defense here for the Steelers isn't bad, and if Minka's going to play, that gives me a lot more hope. Because, we saw what they did. TJ Watt obviously being out isn't the same, but we saw that they terrorized a pretty dang good quarterback in Joe Burrow. So Zach Wilson may be the next, Jet to see ghosts out there. And if they're running around, right, and he got game speed, guys, is a whole different level. And when you can't really take reps, all he can do is watch film, right? And that's a whole different ball game. And so, this one is hard for me. Really, what's hard for me, the model really likes them offensively, and that pill is hard for me to swallow. In fact, I don't really think it should be swallowed. We're going to take it here, but that's where things are a little bit disconnected for me. The Steelers haven't showed that they're slanging the ball offensively, and then the one little weird mismatch there is that if the Jets have any, positive thing, it's that they actually have a pretty good run defense. And what is the one thing that, the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing all right now? It's actually running the ball with Najee Harris. So it looks like we potentially lost Steve here, I'm sure he'll hop back on. But I'll pull these back up. Back on, Steve. Okay, cool. And we'll just pull this back up. And no problem. But yeah, I think nonetheless, this is an interesting matchup. I'm glad that you're keeping it honest. I think we said that last week. If there's going to be a get right game and there's going to be wins, man, if you can, you can pull up, if you can upset, Cincinnati, you can make it over the Jets, right? So you just got to put your game together. Tomlin can get these men right with a good, game plan. This is at home. Trubisky's got to play well if he wants to, hush the Pickett, roar, if you will, especially in that town. But it'll be an interesting one. If I had to guess, I think we're going to go 5 wins, 1 loss, and I think this will be the 1 loss. That's my fourth
Ooh,
game.
okay.
Yeah. I could see it as a letdown. I could see it as a
Yeah.
letdown. I see the Broncos flipping the switch and finally getting the 3 inches they need to get those 3 touchdowns. The Panthers run away. Cowboys, I think we've covered that. Steelers, I think could be the one here. All right, next we got the Colts and an AFC South matchup. This one is in Indianapolis. The Tennessee Titans are coming to town, and they're full of a bag of question marks in my mind, man. I cannot figure out who Tennessee is, what they are, what they aren't. We were breaking down the game yesterday. They're apparently the 8th DVOA, so adjusted pass offense. That doesn't seem to make sense.
Right.
And a lot of question marks. And then flip side, same with the Colts. Now, there's probably a few less question marks, but man, this one's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is a coin flip game for me too. And I think at this, looking at, I know we talked about the stats there, we're making the clips for the week, and yeah, that caught me by surprise for sure. Just by the eye test, I really didn't think Matt Ryan was doing much of, or excuse me, I really didn't think Tannehill was doing much of anything over there. And so when you're looking at this matchup with the Colts and the Titans, this one scares me. So to your point, I can see this model going 5-1 this week. This is the one I think we drop.
This is the one. Okay.
Yeah, and again, this is purely from an emotional standpoint. I think the Colts. I don't know what to make of the Colts. I mean, it's the same Colts that tied against the Texans, right? But they beat the Chiefs, and part of that makes me think, is this an emotional letdown game? Right? You come through. You knock off a team that I know there's a lot of rumblings like, this is the one that the Colts could cover, when they're playing the Chiefs. This is a good backdoor and yada, yada. But by and far, especially by Vegas standards, this is the game that they weren't supposed to win, against the Chiefs. And they did. And, they won in dramatic fashion. So, I could see just an emotional letdown here against a team that's, I think everyone kind of agrees is really not that great, even though they're coming off a win. But yeah, this one to me, I don't have much confidence in either team right now. The jury's out for me, but yeah, we ride.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting. I interpreted it differently. So the model had it very much that it was a possibility that the Colts could win. So I would push back a little bit that was like some game that they had no chance of winning.
Yeah.
I think this is a solid team. I think they came out, the gate with a crazy divisional game, and it was a hard fought game, and they were depleted. I mean, going into Duval and playing the Jags, they didn't practice on Friday before. That's how fucked up they got playing Houston. Then they get romped. Then they come back though, a home game. By no means was that game sexy, but I mean they fought, man. And this is a talented team. I mean, Taylor and that offensive line are got to be one of the top 3 running attacks. We haven't really seen that yet. Matt Ryan is, not supposedly, he's got a resume of at least a game manager, if not more. Now what's realistic expectation, right? He's got to still learn the offense. He's still got to get up to speed. He's still got to get timing. So are we seeing, rather than, a letdown spot, are we seeing the turning of the corner and Matt Ryan getting that offense better, getting more control, with that being able to, lean on the run game a little bit more, check down and do all these other things that a level of quarterback like Matt Ryan can do, right? He can give you those options of being able to audible and, run the ball more efficiently and not just try to go wild like Carson Wentz would, where he would just do and, go suicide mission on some plays. So I don't know. And more so, who are the Titans? Who are the Titans?
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
I can't tell you. It looks like trading AJ Brown was a huge mistake. It looks like that was a huge mistake.
I don't get that. Okay, Julio Jones, sure, right? But yeah,
Sure.
AJ Brown, like what are you thinking, right? What are you going to anyway?
Yeah,
and that's
Robert
why
Woods,
Philly's
I
balling
guess.
in. Yeah.
But looking back, I mean, there seemed to be this narrative, and you Baltimore definitely is. I would say that they created it, and it's their theory. Basically, you really shouldn't pay wide receivers. Basically, the difference between the number 1 receiver and the number 50th receiver is actually not that significant from a efficiency standpoint, from a yards, from a yak, from all these things. It's really a number of touches and drops. And that's why you haven't really seen them go after a wide receiver. They haven't paid a wide receiver. They got rid of Hollywood Brown.
Yeah.
But just because they do it and that's their theory, I don't know. That's you got to know what you're doing, and you got to know how to maybe they can, evaluate talent way better than you can. And so you think, okay, we'll get rid of AJ Brand, no problem. And then you bring in, I think they have Robert Woods from LA, who was off of an ACL tear, and that does not look to be the fit that is needed. So interesting there, but I'm hopeful that the Colts can get right here. I mean, not that we want to see them get too right, as we got the under, but we'll see here. All right, rounding it off, the last game on the card, probably the biggest match, right? Other than Tampa Bay and Kansas City, I think Bills Bills in Baltimore, I gotta think has got to be up there. What do you think?
Oh yeah, no, this is the marquee matchup of the week for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, this is honestly, this is a game I wish we didn't have to bet, just so I could enjoy what
true.
This is going to be a great game. This is going to be a great game, and as a fan of the football, it'd be nice to just watch like the back and forth blows without stressing about it. I mean, listen, again, I can easily see the Bills covering this. I can see the Ravens covering. But what I do know is that it'll be a competitive game, and I think this will be a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a little bit there's some concern, right? So you have the Bills who, banged up on defense, Gabe Davis in the injury reports every week at wide receiver. They're coming off that loss to Miami and Tua. And then on the flip side, though, you've got the Ravens here who, give credit where credit is due to Belichick. For most of that game against the Patriots, it looked like they figured something out that what Miami did to them in the fourth quarter. And so, I still think the Bills are the better team. I think they have more question marks in terms of a health status, but I think overall they're the better team. I definitely can see this game. I can see the Bills coming out with this without much problem. But yeah, this is gonna be fun to watch. What are your thoughts on this, though?
Yeah. I had a fun game. I think when we were breaking this down, one thing that jumped out at me, we had the whole immovable offense or unstoppable offense meets an immovable defense in the Bills. But one thing that, and I'm hearing this and same with the injuries. And the one thing I want to note about the injuries is the Bills defense is really predicated around rotation. So they have, 4 or 5 defensive backs that they're rotating. So the guys that are going to be starting now, yes, they won't be rotating, but these guys have seen game action and elite game action. They're not just like, we're not going from, 100% best corner safeties in the league to the zero scrub that's never seen, and they're going to piss their pants, right? This is still a good team, and they made the team, and they've been in these rotations. Same on the defensive line. So I think there's that. The other thing, though, is that, okay, if Bills offense, Bills defense is really good and Baltimore's offense is really good, but the thing here, the real mismatch is the Bills offense is number 2 to who? To the Ravens, right? But the Ravens defense is 18. Okay, so this is not the same matchup there. So what happens then when Josh Allen's just running and throwing down your throat over and over and over? Can Lamar sustain something against a hardcore defense where he's going to get pressured? And then to your point, is there now, I don't want to say a blueprint, but is there now film? Oh, okay, they're struggling here, or here's the weakness. Let's focus on it. Can you get right in that way? And then what is the game plan to stop Josh Allen? Because the only thing that stopped Josh Allen and the Bills last week was time.
Right.
So hold on to the ball, run the opposite direction. You know what I mean? This is going to be a matchup, a really great game. I think last year they played in the playoffs, right? It was 17-3 for the Bills. So this is a familiar foe. They're not new to playing them on either side. I think great coaches, great teams. Yeah, I mean, this one, I have confidence in the Bills. I mean, they really won me over that week 1 win. I mean, they came out and these guys were clearly, I mean, they dominated the Rams, and the Rams are a good team.
Right.
And I think the only reason they didn't win last week was because, they just ran out of time, and they'll learn from that and they'll get better, and they'll throw that pin in their cap or that feather in their cap and keep moving on and learn that lesson. That's that's kind of my takeaway. But yeah, it'll probably be a nail biter. It'll
Yeah.
probably be a nail biter.
Well, it's funny you say that though, because it's like what are the things that can stop Josh Allen? It's a pretty short list. It's poor time management and a coin
Yeah.
toss. Like those are the
Yeah,
two things.
yeah, well, yeah. Literally has nothing to do with the team. Yeah, this is completely, yeah. It's just luck. So,
Yeah.
It's a good place to maybe to bring it to an end. Just like Josh Allen, the Bills, they're due, we're due. We've had some bad beats go against us, both them and us. I think this is ripe position for the model to bounce back. Whether you believe or you don't believe, that's up to you. We appreciate the people just watching and paying attention at all. I think this is, again, a good week for us to get right. And we're betting our games, and we're hopeful to have a profitable season, guys. And we're only, at the beginning, week 4, we still got a whole hell of a lot of the season to go. So, thanks for sticking with us and, paying attention to us at all. Steve, what are your kind of parting words here?
No, I just want to echo that. It's a long season. Like we said, there's a lot of things that are going on. There's going to be some new things that we haven't seen this season, but the model is going to quickly learn. And I'm really excited for it to sort of, catch its wind, if you will, and start doing what we expect it to do. But other than that, just looking forward to the football. This is the mecca time of sports. I love when we get that the football season, the college football season, then college basketball is right around the corner. Like, oh God, yeah, let's go. This is what life's all about.
Playoff baseball, and then in October we'll get basketball. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
man, we're in the thick of it right now. This is what you live for. This is when in the dog days of June and July, and you got nothing, and this is what you're dreaming for right here.
Yeah. Fall, winter time, like that talks to me. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, guys, we really appreciate it. This is week 4. You see the card. Either tail or fade. Let us know what you think. Are there games that you like, games you don't like? We would love to hear from you. Please like, subscribe, share this. Reach out to us on any of the socials at Bully the Board. Also, we have the website, bullytheboard.com. You can find all of the model output is completely free, no paywall or email wall. And thank you, guys. Have a good week.